It's cool. It's fucking, dude, grind set is good, okay? It's just going to make you grind harder.
And a lot
Let's hear what this dingus had to say about Vietnam.
A number of countries reportedly reaching out to negotiate tariffs with President Trump over the weekend. Joining us now with the latest, President Trump's senior trade and manufacturing advisor, Peter Navarro. And given the backdrop, Peter, of what we've seen, the tumult in the markets, and the S&P could theoretically be in bear market territory. And I know you make the distinction between Main Street and Wall Street, but obviously they're interconnected. So to get the real story on how many countries are calling and on whether the president is actually agreeable is important, because we've heard all these countries are making the phone call, but then we hear that maybe the president isn't interested at this point. Can you clear that up?
Sure, Joe, but let me first take you back in a time capsule, because this feels a lot like the day after the election in 2016. And I don't know if you remember that day, but I was on the set with you. The futures were dead red down. And I made the prediction that the Dow would hit 25,000. And Andrew's head exploded. It's like, well, but you correctly pointed out that wasn't that heavy a lift. And we did hit that, not in 4 years, but in less than 2 years. And what I'm seeing, Joe, is a beautiful situation where we will hit 50,000 on the Dow, and we're going to have a broad-based recovery in the S&P 500. The market's trying to find its bottom now. The thing I would say to retail investors...
Yeah. You don't understand. They're just trying to find the bottom. It could... Yeah, that's all it is. Because when you hit the bottom, the only place you can go from there is up. It's simple. You see, it's simple. Okay? It's all about finding the bottom. It's all about getting to a place where the only place you can go is up from that point on. You know? Thank you.
Is don't get panicked out by all of this.
I love that they're also, like, Trump is trying to reinstill confidence in the market. And stop people from panic selling. But because of how unstable his administration is, they can't even come out and demonstrate the messaging discipline necessary to make sure that people have confidence in them and therefore the market. Come on, guys. Everything's going to be good. Trust me. Yeah, you know what would be really good? When you make short selling illegal. Yeah, we're going to... Listen, this is not a circuit breaker, okay? What I'm describing to you is actually simply not being patriotic. Because what is more patriotic than demonstrating diamond hands on the blossoming American economy? Which is why we have now made it illegal to sell. The moment that we hit that point is the moment where we're in 2008 territory. We're not there yet somehow. But that's where this is like, it's over. It's the point of no return. And I think what may have caused a stay of execution, here, unironically, is the one random guy being like, yeah, they're putting a pause on the tariffs, and the immediate breathing room that it gave a lot of these retail and institutional investors.
And what the president could have added to that fine truth was the fact that the biggest tax cut in American history, the broadest base tax cut in American history, is coming within a matter of months. So any discussion of recession seems silly when you factor that in. Plus, the Fed is not going to do its job, but the long bond is doing it. We're lowering our oil prices, which is just amazing.
Right.
And here's the one other thing I want to say macro-wise, Joe, because, look, this is all about people worried about global recession. That's what they're worried about. The restructuring that's going to happen, Joe, globally is going to start with China and Vietnam and Germany, heavily export-dependent countries. They're going to have to engage significant fiscal stimulus to reorient their economy. So that thing is going to go on. In the meantime,
Peter,
we're
they're
going to
much
boom
bigger.
here.
I think they're much bigger than most people thought. And I think from policy institutes on both sides of the aisle, the methodology that was used has been universally derided as being non-serious. I don't know whether you know exactly who came up with the formula, but it allowed you to at least characterize most of these countries as being.
He's like, I didn't come up with the formula. A very famous economist by the name of, what was his name? Ron Anavar or something. What's the meme about this fucking asshole who basically did an anagram for his name in his books and constantly pointed to some other guy whose work he was relying on, and it turns out Ron Vera, Peter Navarro, came up with a fake guy named Ron Vera, which is an anagram of his name, and heavily relied on this other person to prove his theories. The other person did not exist. The other person was himself, which is hilarious because, one, he didn't even try to make up like a totally different name. Ron Vera is just a direct anagram. And two, that's exactly what Donald Trump did as well in the past. Donald Trump famously would make phone calls as someone entirely different when it was him behind the fucking phone. These guys are so funny, dude. They do alter ego shit. It's awesome. The other person existed. He just wasn't an economist. I thought Ron Vera was a made up guy. Yeah, Trump's alter ego was John Barron, right? Yeah.
Their tariffs well above the reality of the situation, so that when you say that we're going to do half on them, it was much higher than anyone anticipated. And I think you'd have to concede that this was not the market reaction you were looking for. There's a way of maybe incrementally trying to accomplish some of the things that the president wants to do in a reasonable, serious way. And this just almost across the board has caused what you're seeing in the stock.
A publishing company plans to add an advisory note to future copies of a book written by White House advisor Peter Navarro after it was revealed that Navarro fabricated one of the people he quoted. The character Ron Vera appears in Navarro's 2011 book, Death by China, offering dire warnings about Chinese imports. Only the Chinese can turn a leather sofa into an acid bath, a baby crib into a lethal weapon, and a cell phone battery into a heart-piercing shrapnel, Vera is quoted as saying. But while the book is not supposed to be fiction, Vera is a made-up character. Ron Vera is an anagram of Navarro, said Tom Bartlett, a journalist who exposed the ruse in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Vera appears in half of a dozen of Navarro's books dating to 2001. Navarro, who directs the White House Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy, defended the fabrication as a whimsical device. At no time was the character used improperly as a fact source, he wrote in an email. It's just a fun device. Bartlett grew curious about Vera after being alerted to the character by Tessa Morris Suzuki, a professor emeritus at the Australian National University. She's an Asia scholar and was working on an essay about the rather heated rhetoric of Peter Navarro towards China, Bartlett said. While Vera is described in one of the books as a doctoral student at Harvard, as Navarro himself had been, the school had no record of him. Eventually, Greg Autry, who co-authored Death by China, acknowledged that Navarro made the character up. It's refreshing that somebody finally figured out an inside joke that has been hiding in plain sight for years, Navarro wrote in his email. I was just memeing. Except his memeing ass that wrote these books are now directly guiding Trump's trade policy, and actually played a formative role in Trump's trade policy in the first Trump term as well. This time, though, Trump has more power and has more means of enforcement. America's more destabilized and also, weirdly enough, more comfortable with a guy like Donald Trump. So now he's one of the figureheads of this whole process, this whole like tariff war shit. How awesome. As she puts it, the joke wears very thin when you get to certain statements about China and the Chinese people that are quite negative, Bartlett said. Ron Vera says things that are pretty over the top, and it's hard to construe them necessarily as whimsical. Navarro's publisher, Prentice Hall, and its parent company, Pearson, were also in the dark about the invented character until this week. Overland said Pearson plans to add a publisher's note to future editions. And as we already discussed, the episode is not likely to cause Navarro any grief with his boss. However, Donald Trump famously invented his own fictional spokesman, John Barron, in the 1980s. Internet wags have joked that perhaps Barron could offer some PR advice to the newly unmasked Vera. Amazing. White House aide Stephen Murren has an elaborate comparison for why the U.S. can force other countries to stomach the tariffs. He says to think of a property tax increase levied by a town. If you're a prospective buyer of a home in that town, maybe you can instead buy elsewhere. You have the leverage to escape the incidence of the new tax. By contrast, if you have someone who has to sell a home, you're inflexible. You have to eat the cost of the higher property tax. Similarly, Mirren says China has trained its workers to sell to U.S. consumer markets. They can't go anywhere else, so they have to eat the cost of our tariffs on them, Mirren said. Except, even if China eats some of the cost of the tariffs, the Americans will have to pay for the rest of the cost of the tariffs. The American importers will pay the entry fee themselves. Then they will carry that cost on to the consumers, which will lead to a price increase. Mirren gave in bait on why Navarro and other White House advisors appear to be giving conflicting signals on the viability of negotiations. There are conflicting narratives because everyone's got an opinion. That's fine. Disagreement is how you can avoid groupthink, and I think that's very healthy. Amazing. Meanwhile, they need to demonstrate messaging discipline at the top because everyone is relying on their every word right now to see where things are going to head. So ironically enough, the instability demonstrated through a lack of messaging discipline at the administration is also further causing the markets to collapse. Incredible. Awesome. They have the wrong initiative, and they're also doing it in the most hilariously incompetent manner possible, which is further increasing the volatility. Good stuff, guys.
Stock market.
I feel liberated. Who needs money anyway, okay? Let's be real. You don't need to retire. You were never going to anyway. It's awesome. It's cool. It's fucking, dude, grind set is good, okay? It's just going to make you grind harder.
And a lot of head scratching and head shaking on whether anyone really knows what they're doing in this case, Peter.
All right, well,
Can you at least acknowledge that?
Sure. No, I can't, because here's what I'm seeing. You're throwing a lot of stuff at me. First of all, the methodology was perfectly sound. It was done by the Council of Economic Advisors based on long-term studies that are in the academic literature. And the people taking pot shots at us are the same people that always take pot.
Don't you dare say you're tired of winning. Trump already accounted for that. He said, we're going to be winning so much. You're going to say, please, sir, no more winning. And I'll say, we're going to keep winning.
Pot shots
The American
on us.
Enterprise Institute, Peter.
Of course. Of course. Joe,
Larry
come on.
Lindsay.
The American Enterprise Institute has been against it.
Conservative, Larry Lindsay.
Let's not get buried down in those weeds now. You asked me a serious question. Was the president willing to negotiate? What we have here is a national emergency based on massive.
This chatter asks a very important question. He says, I don't get it. Did people think stonk go up forever? Capitalism dictates that, yes, stonk must go up forever. That's at the heart of one of these contradictions, one of these issues within capitalism. Yes, the answer to your question, Kaka Wizard, is yes. It's not correct, but yes, capitalism requires perma-profit and perma-growth. That is kind of at the heart of my disagreements with the way that we manage the economy, with the way that we operate currently. It's kind of the underpinning of virtually every policy decision that the American government makes. Virtually every decision that every other government makes. So yes. Chatter arriving at incredibly important texts from a very long time ago. on his own going, this doesn't seem to be a stable way to do business.
Chronic trade deficit caused by systematically higher tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So when you ask if we're willing to negotiate, the president will always listen. But let's understand what the problem is. When you have a country like Vietnam, let's take Vietnam. When they come to us and say,
free Ukraine is right. That's what Trump is doing. Trump is freeing Ukraine from the treacherous nature of sovereignty. Just like Trump is liberating everybody from having to worry about finances or having money in their pocket, you know, more money, more problems type shit. He's also liberating Ukraine from, having any semblance of sovereignty ever again. It's very cool how he's liberating everybody. Yeah, he's liberating Ukraine from the limited amount of resources that it already had. He's just creating stability this way.
We'll go to zero tariffs. That means nothing to us because it's the non-tariff cheating that matters. Let's do Vietnam, Joe. They sell us $15 for every $1 we sell them. About $5 of that 15 is China transshipping to Vietnam to evade their
yeah, see, he's saying exactly what I've been explaining to you. There's a reason why. There's a reason why you can't just put tariffs on China and then be like, and that's right, we did it. We did the damn thing. You have to also tariff the allies that have played an important role in trying to undermine China's regional power. Okay? Because China has moved manufacturing to those other countries, partially because they have developed too much and they can't have the same exploitative wages any longer. Okay, that's one of the reasons. The other is to avoid the sanctions war that Donald Trump wanted to implement against China. So now it has moved its manufacturing facilities elsewhere, so you got to fucking tariff those countries too.
Tariffs.
Why don't you just go after those shippers?
What does Vietnam do? They dump into our markets, killing our shrimpers, our people who make metal brackets, kitchen cabinets, agricultural products. They engage in intellectual property theft. They have the biggest number of cases aside from China at the Department of Commerce on the dumping. So the point is, anybody who wants to come to talk to us about lowering your non-tariff barriers. Vietnam has a 10% VAT. Europe has a 19% VAT. We can't compete against that. We have tried at the World Trade Organization to get, Andrew, let me just make this point. We have tried at the World Trade Organization since the 1970s to get VAT tax relief, and they've told us no every single time. We've won case after case at the World Trade Organization on things like our agricultural products, pork, beef, and other and corn,
Peter,
and they just blow us off.
Vietnam's 0% tariff offer is not enough. It's the non-tariff cheating that matters. What is the non-tariff cheating? I don't know. Just stuff. Yeah, reporter, the EU has said they offered 0 for 0 tariffs on cars and industrial goods. Is that not enough? Trump says, no, it's not.
The EU has said that they have offered 0 for 0 tariffs on cars and industrial goods. Is that not enough?
Well, the EU...
Okay, so in the past, whenever a foreign corporation went to a new market, a smaller country that wanted to maintain some semblance of sovereignty over its own domestic affairs, and they wanted to dominate that marketplace, the country would sometimes take initiatives like, what's the famous case? Like Philip Morris, I believe. Was it with Vietnam or Philippines? Like, let's say you have a product and a country is like, yeah, your product is poisonous, even though, we'll allow it to be sold. We have to put like safety stickers on it or something, right? And hold on one second. Ne yaptın anlamadım ki bu ne? İyi peki eyvallah. under normal circumstances, someone has to get in there and settle a trade dispute. I'm forgetting the actual. There's a real one that I'm talking about, but I don't know exactly what it was. But yok, sıkıntı yok. Neli yaptın sosu? Peki. Who cooks for you? My billionaire father.